Okay, so let's dive into this. So we are back for another Leader Tribe Live. So I'm so excited for this conversation tonight. It's definitely going to be a little bit different than our usual conversations. And I intentionally chose to do this one solo. I love to have guests on, but tonight I wanted to do this one by myself, specifically because I think it's a very important message for our community. And I wanted to make sure that I wasn't worried about agendas or guests and facilitating. I really wanted to take the time to focus on this topic and just make sure that it was delivered clearly and without interruption. Because the months that are ahead of us are going to require a lot of discernment, a lot of structure, and most importantly, integration. And we're going to talk about that word tonight, but it's definitely going to require a lot more integration, not just more information. And so before we move any further into the year, I felt that it was very important for us to pause and just make sure that you all are equipped and not just inspired by this space. So tonight is about preparation. It is about governance. It's about alignment that actually holds up under pressure. And so if you're here live tonight, just let me know in the comments where you're joining from. And if you're watching the replay, by the time you see this, go ahead and put replay in the comments for me so I can shout you out after the live is over. Okay, so I always like to start with our fireside chat before I really dive all the way in. So for those of you that may remember, in December of last year, I did a live on TikTok. And the live was called The Remembrance, right? And so that conversation was definitely not about hype, but it was about posture. And it was about remembering who you are beneath everything that you survived, beneath all the labels, beneath everything that you adapted to in your life, and also everything that you've been carrying. And so it was definitely about embodiment before performance, being instead of doing, and truth before strategy. And so that live kind of set a foundation for the conversation we're going to be having tonight. And what I really understand clearly now is that remembrance was never meant to stop at awareness, right? It's one thing to be aware of something, but it's also meant to be embodied. So the point of these conversations is not just for you all to hear it, but to apply it, to live it, to walk it out. And remembering who you are is just the beginning, right? The real work is what happens after you remember. And it's the decisions that change when you no longer have to live disconnected from your identity. And, so the real question I want to ask tonight is, what structures do you build when you stop postponing who you are, right? What falls away when you refuse to live beneath the truth that you've seen? So if that's something you can relate to already, go ahead and just hit the hearts for me real quick so I know that I'm talking to the right group tonight. But that's really where this talk is coming from. That's kind of the foundation of it, was that live that I did. And so we're going to be talking about a governed life. So if you're just coming on, go ahead and grab your tea. I have mine over here. I'll be sipping a little bit as we're talking and getting into this conversation. Go ahead and get comfortable. And also share this live for me too with somebody that you know may need to hear this message as well. Don't just sit and listen to it, but share the message with others that can benefit from it also. Okay? So we're going to have a real conversation tonight. So I'm going to take a sip of tea real quick and let you guys have a chance to comment and share. Let me respond to a couple people. Hey. But yeah, go ahead and hit the hearts. Go ahead and share. And I'm going to dive into this. I love chamomile tea. Okay. So let's talk. So to start this conversation off tonight, I want to lead with the decision that really changed everything for me. And I tell people all the time, I do not believe in becoming. I know that sounds weird, but I don't believe in becoming. I don't. I don't believe in becoming something or becoming anything. I believe in being. And I'm going to tell you why. So the decision that changed my life forever was deciding to just be, not to become, not to try and strive to be something, but to just be. And so because of that one decision, hey Grind, thanks for tuning in. Because of that one decision, just choosing to be, now the way that I show up in life every day, I show up as the person I was born to be right now. It's not something I'm striving for. It's not something that I'm aspiring to. It's something that I chose and made a decision to be. And that's going to be very, very important for what we talk about next tonight. And so once I made that decision, my actions and my choices started naturally aligning with that inner reality. I began making decisions that benefited that person, that protected that person, that supported that person's life. And so when you choose to accept identity, right, you start eliminating anything that's not aligned with that, right? You start authoring your life and your days and your responses. You start authoring your actions. You take responsibility for it, right? And even your thoughts, you start thinking from that place. That's the real shift, choosing to be who you are and who you were always meant to be. And so these changes didn't happen because I was trying to become somebody new. Trying to be somebody new never really got me anywhere, to be honest with you, other than stressing myself out. But I had to accept that that person always was me, right? That's who I always was. And so I'm saying this to say that when God gives you a vision or a promise, right? It's not some future destination that you're meant to chase. What he's showing you is a memory. What he's showing you is your spirit remembering who you truly are, who he created you to be. So it's not some destination. It's not some future thing to aspire to. It's your reality, your true reality. And it's waiting for you to choose it. And so I'm starting to feel this. Okay, once you agree with that truth, right? Your life has no choice but to begin aligning with it. But you have to decide to be that person and to show up as that person every single day until your life, until your circumstances, until your situation has no choice but to respond accordingly. I'm gonna let that sit for a second. In other words, you're not waiting on the promise. You're supposed to be walking in the promise as if it were already established. I want y'all to take a minute and think about that, because that's what belief looks like in real life. So if you've ever felt that tension between who you know you are and how you've been living, go ahead and drop me in the comments for me real quick so I can make sure that y'all are hearing me. So if you can relate to that, that tension between knowing who you are and how you've actually been living, go ahead and drop a 1 in the comments, because this conversation tonight is about to go deeper. That's right, grind. Every day. Every single day. All right. There you go. Yep. That's what I'm talking about. Thank y'all. Okay. So let's get a little bit deeper. Y'all ready? So, like I said, I'm not here to give you a bunch of information tonight. I'm here to help you to integrate. Okay? So write down that word if you are taking notes tonight, which I hope you are. Integration. I'm here to help you recognize tonight where belief has not yet become behavior. Because a lot of us are well informed, right? We have all the information. We've taken the courses. We are so content with consuming information. We know scriptures. We know principles, right? We've studied. We've taken classes. We've attended sessions, conferences, all kinds of things, right? You have all this information. But tonight is not about what you know. It's about what you've integrated. Tonight's going to start to reveal where truth has stayed theoretical in your life instead of embodied, and where belief has been admired, but it hasn't necessarily been applied or lived, where information hasn't fully crossed that threshold of action or structure or decision. Okay, so Hope you guys are ready. Let's get into it. So one example that I want to give is that, well, matter of fact, I'm just gonna put it out there. I'm gonna go ahead and reference scripture tonight. Okay. Let's look at Abraham. Okay. When we look at the story of Abraham, we're looking at a clear example of belief that produces alignment. This is why scripture tells us that God calls those things which are not as though they were, not as though they are. Think about that. Think about that scripture. As though they were. And that matters. That word choice really matters. Because faith is not pretending that something exists in the natural, right? It's responding to something that already exists in the spirit. I hope you guys are hearing me tonight. I really do. It's responding to something that already exists in the spirit. Your spirit has a memory. It knows the real you, the you that God created, the you that existed before circumstances, before trauma, before survival, before labels ever had a say in your life and into the person that you have become, right? Before all of these other things, your spirit has a memory of who God created you to be. So when Abraham, who's my example, received the promise, he didn't wait for the evidence of it to align his life, right? He aligned his life because he believed the promise was already established. Please hear me. That belief showed up in how he lived, how he obeyed, and how he moved. Keyword is moved, right? That's what integration looks like. It's not just belief, it's action. And so you don't have to try to force yourself to become someone new. What you should do is remember who you are and then live accordingly. Live from that knowledge, live from that memory. And when you do that consistently, your life has no choice but to respond. Okay? If this is starting to really hit home for you and help you to kind of reframe how you've been thinking about faith and action, let me know in the comments. Grant said heavy. Appreciate it. Okay? All right, let's go a little bit deeper. I hope y'all are with me. Another example that I want to use tonight is Joseph. Joseph is the perfect example of stewardship before governance. Have you ever wondered why, or even how, Joseph remained a good steward and kept getting promoted into leadership in any environment that he was placed in? Whether it was slavery and captivity, whether it was in prison. Have you ever wondered how he was able to do that? It's because that the dream that God gave him when he was at his father's house revealed something about who God created him to be. And so Joseph, because he had that information, because he had that sense of identity, because he had that glimpse of who God created him to be, he made a decision that he was never going to allow his circumstances to redefine his identity. My God. So even in captivity, Joseph still showed up as the leader God had already named him to be. Think about that. Every single environment that Joseph went into, he stewarded, right? As the man that God told him he was. Not as the man that his circumstances tried to reduce him to. And that's because Joseph wasn't just building a skill set. He wasn't just building character, but he was embodying the promise. So when the time came, that appointed time came, he didn't have to rise into readiness. He was already ready. He was ready. Right? And notice what qualified him for governance, to become governor. Joseph didn't just provide value through the interpretation of a dream, right? That was his mastery of his gift, right? That was one part of it. He came equipped with a solution. I hope you guys are catching this tonight. I really do. He came equipped with a solution. And what was that solution? The solution was to build a storehouse for coming crisis. Hadn't happened yet, but he had a strategy for a crisis that hadn't even arrived yet. And normally when we hear the word storehouse, right, we tend to think of it as a destination for provision, because a lot of times we hear, scriptures like bring ye the tithes into the storehouse, right? So we've always heard the word storehouse associated with tithing, which is great, which is one part of it, right? But a storehouse is not just a destination, it's a structure. It's fortification. It's preparation for what has not yet been seen. And that was something that Joseph understood. And so he said, and I'm trying to quote this accurately, he said, in the years of increase, we will store a portion of that, right? In preparation for the famine that is coming. And it was that strategy that he gave, not just the interpretation, because he interpreted what nobody else could. That was important, right? That got him in the room. The gift got him in the room and brought him before the king, right? But what kept him there, what got him promoted, was the solution and the strategy that he had prepared. Oh my goodness. It was the strategy that elevated him to governor. Because governance is not just about rulership, right? It's not just about being in control. What governance is stewardship. If you're taking notes, write that word down. Stewardship. Joseph had mastered stewardship long before he was entrusted with authority over a nation. That's right. Already ready. Exactly. Solution based. Exactly. I'm glad you guys are catching this. So if this is starting to shift the way that you're thinking about preparation and responsibility, go ahead and hit the hearts for me real quick. Go ahead and hit those hearts for me real quick. Okay. So let's kind of bring this back in and apply it to you now. So if governance is about stewardship, right? Then the question becomes, how are you stewarding your promise? Are you waiting for crisis to arrive and hoping that God moves for you? Are you waiting on someday? Are you asking God to intervene when he's already empowered you to govern your own life? Or will crisis come and find you already walking in your promise, embodying your identity, prepared, fortified, ready? Because you stewarded the little that was entrusted to you. Okay? Think about that for a second. I'm going to let that sit for a second, let you think about it. How are you stewarding your promise? So I'm not here to preach tonight. Disclaimer. Okay. But I am sharing principles from the Bible that I live by because they are the standard that governs my life and my leadership. So you don't have to even share my faith to recognize the principles and the patterns in scripture. To me, the Bible is not a storybook. It's not a fairy tale. It's literally the architecture of life. It's the outline of our inheritance. It is timeless and unfailing wisdom. It's the principles that activate the promises of God. And it's also the methodology by which I live. Most people try to apply their life to the Bible. I apply the Bible to life. And that's why, even in my background, perfect example, if you look back there, in my background, you'll always see my book and my Bible. It's a subtle statement. It's a signal that lets people know I'm not just called, I'm competent, right? I take seriously what God has entrusted to me, and I'm committed to mastering it. The Bible represents foundation, right? And the book represents the discipline. Together, it's a statement that I don't separate faith from excellence or calling from capability. I'm not waiting to be equipped. I'm actively equipping myself for the work that I've been given. That's stewardship. If this is resonating with you, go ahead and let me know in the comments. Drop a heart or something. Let me know. So I've said a lot so far, but I want to kind of open the floor a little bit tonight as well. And I want us to actively begin integrating and reflecting together tonight for the rest of the time that I'm with you all. And as we're reflecting, I'm going to be here to answer any questions that may come up for you. This is my night to pour into you. This is my night to be available to answer questions. So please ask questions as we're going through this. But my goal for this year, because this is a year of ascension, and I've been declaring that since December. This year is going to be about ascension. It has ascension written all over it. But hear me, it's for those that are in position. Okay? And so my goal this year is to prepare the people connected to me to be in position for ascension. So as we start our reflection tonight, as we start going through this together, because I want to integrate, I want to reflect, I want to really help you to apply this to your life. The first question I want to ask, and I want you to think about this and put it in the comments for me. Where in your life recently has pressure revealed a lack of preparation? Feel free to be honest. The more honest you are, the more powerful this conversation will be. Where in your life right now has pressure revealed a lack of preparation? Think about that. Thank you, Grind. I'm doing my best. Okay. Something to think about. You can put it in the comments for me. If you're not, ashamed to, that's fine. But where in your life has pressure revealed a lack of preparation? So as you're thinking about that, I'm going to go ahead and go into the integration part of tonight. This is where revelation becomes governance, right? So it's not just about what sounds good, it's about what gets implemented. So tonight I'm going to be sharing 8 integration principles out of the 12 that I have. Okay, so the first one, and if you, thank you for the transparency, Grind. I appreciate that. Okay, hospital visit out from work. Exactly. Okay, and a lot of times we allow those moments to make us feel down, right? But it's really God's way of revealing an area where He wants you to pay more attention, right? So those moments are uncomfortable, but they're necessary to wake us up and to get us back into alignment. So I appreciate your transparency in sharing that. Okay, so let's talk about integration a little bit. So the first principle I want to share tonight: governance is not control. If you're taking notes, which you should be, if you're taking notes, go ahead and write that down. Governance is not control. Control reacts, but governance sets terms. Governance is quiet. It's decisive movement. Okay, that's the principle. Now here's the integration. Where in your life are you reacting instead of governing? And what structure needs to change so the problem stops repeating? Okay, take a moment to think about that. I'll read it again. Where in your life are you reacting instead of governing? And what structure needs to change in your life so the problem stops repeating? All right, principle number 2. Peace is a product of structure. I can attest to this one. My God. Peace is a product of structure. Okay? Peace is not emotional. It is architectural. It is protected by design. If you want to have peace, you protect it by the way you design your life. So here's how we integrate that. I want you to think about what boundary requires enforcement or reinforcement in my life instead of discussion. Where have I been discussing boundaries that I need to be enforcing? That's the first thing to consider. Second thing to consider, what environment needs redesign instead of debate? Sometimes it's not about discussion. Sometimes it's about relocation. Removing yourself from spaces that no longer align with your peace. Right? So that's the integration part of it. Two things to think about. What boundary requires reinforcement instead of discussion? And what environment needs redesign instead of debate? Let me know if I'm going too fast, guys, okay? All right. Principle number 3. Boundaries are movement. Boundaries are not speeches. They are shifts in access. They are changes in rhythm. So a boundary is not you just saying what you don't like. That's another way of putting it, right? A boundary is how you respond when people cross it, right? It's how you enforce it. It's one thing to just say, I don't like when you do this. It's another thing to say, hey, I value our relationship, but this isn't working for me. And if this behavior continues, this is going to be the end result. Totally different energy, right? You're not negotiating, you're not discussing, you're stating terms. That's governance. All right, so what does that look like as far as integration? Integration would say, what would change if I stopped explaining my boundaries and started adjusting instead? Okay, what would change if you stopped explaining and started adjusting? All right, principle number 4. Alignment reduces friction. When your identity, your standards, and your systems align, friction decreases. And that's because clarity carries authority. It's very, very hard to have friction in your life when you have mastered operating in clarity. There's no ambiguity that people can hide behind. There's no confusion that people can use to distract you. Clarity carries authority. The more clear that you are about who you are, about your standards, about the way that you want your life to be structured, the less friction you have to deal with. And so, integration now, let's talk about what that looks like. Question 1, where is misalignment draining my energy? If you feel like your energy is drained all the time, it's probably because something is not in alignment. Question number 2, what standard needs structure to support it? What standard do I have that I'm just stating, but I haven't really reinforced it with structure? I haven't protected it with structure. That could be something as simple as, hey, listen, I'm not answering my phone after a certain time. Right? That's a standard. But once you set the standard, you then have to enforce it, enforce that structure. Okay. Number 5, govern before you grow. So expansion without governance creates chaos. But governance before expansion creates longevity. Okay? And this is where a lot of leaders run into issues, because if you're more focused on promotion than preparation, it catches up with you later. You prepare for what you're asking for so that when it comes, it lasts. That's the correct order. So, how do we integrate that? Question number 1: what are you trying to grow that hasn't been stabilized? Oh, which part did you want me to say again, Gron? I'm sorry. Which part? Um, I'll just rewind. Okay. So what I said was expansion without governance creates chaos, but governance before expansion creates longevity. In other words, don't spend more time focused on promotion than you do focused on preparation. Because it's the preparation that makes sure that what you're building actually lasts. Okay? So the integration questions were, what are you doing or what are you trying to grow that hasn't been stabilized? And the second question was, what has to be governed in your life before it can grow or before it can scale? Hey, Moses, thanks for tuning in. Okay? And that was principle number 5. All right, principle number 6. If you're just coming in, I'm going over some governance principles that we're talking about tonight. We're going to talk about the principle and then how to integrate it. So if you're taking notes, make sure you write these down. I'm on number 6 out of 8. Number 6, belief must become behavior. A belief that does not translate into daily decisions is just decoration, right? A governed life reflects what you claim. Okay? So it's not enough to just say that you believe something or to just say or declare something. You have to integrate it. You have to apply it. You have to live it. So the integration question for that principle is, what belief do you say you hold that your daily actions don't reflect yet? Okay? Where in your life has what you say you believe not become behavior? All right, that was number 6. Principle number 7. Storehouses reveal preparation. Preparation is always invisible until pressure arrives. Crisis is what exposes what was or was not stored, what was or was not prepared for. So you don't get a lot of recognition when you're preparing, right? Until there's a need, until there's a crisis, until it comes in handy. So the integration question for that principle is, if crisis arrived tomorrow, what would it reveal about the storehouses that you've built in your finances, in your leadership, in your relationships, or even in your discipline? What would crisis reveal about how well you've prepared? All right, and then the last one that I'm sharing tonight, principle number 8. Identity requires governance. You cannot, will not walk in authority while you're still negotiating with yourself. Self-governance is what precedes external influence. If you cannot govern yourself, you will not be trusted to govern others or anything else. It starts with how you govern your life, your own standards, your own beliefs and behaviors, your own structure. That's what governance really is. It starts with you. And so the integration question for that one is, where are you negotiating with yourself instead of governing yourself? Where are you still giving yourself leeway to slip into old patterns, old habits, old mindsets? Where are you still negotiating with yourself instead of governing yourself accordingly? Instead of operating from the person God created you to be and saying, this does not align with who I am or where I'm going. Okay? And then I want to anchor these principles tonight with this. A governed life doesn't chase peace, it architects peace. This is how leaders stop grinding and start governing. And so I want to start translating some of this reflection tonight because I know I've asked you guys a lot of questions to reflect on, but I want to take that reflection and put it into action. Okay? So make sure that you guys don't just write down the questions, but really take the time to think about what that looks like in your life, right? What that looks like when it's applied to you. And so if this conversation resonated with you tonight and you found yourself thinking deeper than usual, let me know in the comments real quick. Because I do want to open up the floor for some questions before I close tonight. I was trying to get done around 8:45 so I could have some time to answer your questions. So if you do have questions for me and you kind of want to know a little bit more about how to integrate this or what that looks like in practice, just let me know. I'm happy to share with you guys. I'm looking at your comments on my phone because it's not showing me on the computer. Okay, awesome. All right, cool. Okay, so as you guys are taking a second to think about that, I'm going to sip on my tea. But if you do have questions for me tonight about what governance looks like or how to integrate that, let me know in the comments. Oh, you want to go back to number 4 and go deeper? Okay. Let's go back to number 4. Okay. All right, so when you say you want to go deeper on number 4, alignment reduces friction. Do you want me to provide an example of that, or what do you mean by go deeper? Or do you have an example that you want to ask me about? I know it takes a second for the comments to show up, so I'm kind of pausing to give it a chance. Okay. Alignment reduces friction. I think a lot of times what we will do as human beings is when we want things, we try to force alignment. We try to make it work. And sometimes that could be something as simple as not knowing when to let something go. Right? Not knowing when to let go. Not knowing when to pivot or to change course or to try something different. Sometimes work ethic can get in your way. Because you'll keep trying when you need to be pivoting. So alignment is not just about chasing what you want, but it's about making sure that what you want aligns with what you need and where you're going. I think there comes a point where we have to, what's a better way to say that? I think there comes a point where we have to learn how to want what we need. Right? And I think that's a big part of that has to do with self-love. The more that you learn to love yourself, the harder it is for you to stay aligned with things that don't reciprocate that level of love and respect that you have for yourself. And so alignment is one of those things where we can trick ourselves sometimes if we're not careful. And that's why I think it's important, like I said earlier, to go back to identity, because when you have a clear sense of identity, that's where you learn to love yourself, to honor yourself, to be true to yourself and who you truly are, to honor your strengths, to acknowledge your weaknesses, and to make sure that your path is aligned with the truth of who you are. And that's what alignment really is. It's about making sure that everything in your life reflects the truth of who you really are. And so when we say alignment reduces friction, whenever there's friction in your life, a lot of times it's because there's something that you're forcing to work that is not aligned or that just isn't working. That's right. Learn to love growth, identity, purpose, goals. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. Was there any other principle that you guys wanted me to expound on some more? Because I'm happy to. Just let me know. Principle one was governance is not control. Principle two, peace is a product of structure. Principle three, boundaries are movement. Principle four, alignment reduces friction. You like number six? Yeah, that's one of my favorites too. Number five, govern before you grow. Number six, belief must become behavior. Number seven, storehouses reveal preparation. And number eight, identity requires governance. Okay, so if you guys want me to expound on any of those, let me know. I can expound further. Yeah, but what was number six? Belief must become behavior. I think that's the biggest one. And I think that can also be the hardest one for people too, because I think, especially in religious spaces, that we are taught to think that belief means one thing, right? That belief just means saying, oh, I believe, right? Or I think it's possible. Or I think God could do it for me. Those are all things that we're taught to accept as a belief, right? But you don't truly believe something until it affects your behavior, until it changes the way that you operate. And there's a certain point, and I think the reason why behavior is so important is because by the time it gets to behavior, it's no longer something that you believe or hope, right? But it's something that you know. It has to be something that you know, something that you are sure about, something that you are so confident is already established, is already happening, is already for you, right? And that's when it really starts to become behavior, because when you truly believe something, it affects the way you move, the way you think, the way you speak. It changes you. And I think that, especially within, the church culture, that we've learned to see the word belief as hope. And it's not hope, it's assurance. It's knowing that you know. Yeah, walk towards what you believe until you attain it or accomplish it. Exactly. But we have to start moving like we know it's already ours. That's the main point. That's what governing really looks like. Because when you truly believe that and your belief starts to align with your actions, when there's no disconnect between who you say you are and who you believe you are and how you show up, that's when life starts to adjust, right? And that's what authority really looks like in real time. When your life begins to adjust to the truth of who you are. That's what authority really looks like. That's what governance really looks like. Oh, the questions for number six. The integration question for number six was, what belief do you say you hold that your daily actions don't reflect yet? So where's there misalignment between what you're saying that you believe and what you're actually doing? You're welcome. All right. So I know, Moses, you weren't here for this question. One of the other questions that I asked as well was, where in your life does pressure reveal a lack of preparation? A lot of times, when there is a lack of preparation, right? Like I said earlier, it's God's way of letting us know, hey, this area needs your attention. This area needs to be put in alignment. You said, can you believe but still have a little doubt? I want to answer this one carefully. Remember that parable in the Bible about the seeds that were sown on different ground? It's possible to believe something and then have doubt come in and choke it. And that's why I said it's important to not just believe, but to know, right? Because you can believe in something and then not believe in something, right? But when you know something, that means at that point it's become something that you've been convicted about, right? It's something that you are so sure about. And so I think the important thing is that once a belief is starting to form, to protect that belief from doubt, meaning you have to start guarding your thoughts from those little slick thoughts that try to creep in there. Like, oh, okay, this is what God said to me. And there should be a period at the end of that, right? But what our brains do, because we're always looking for ways to feel safe and ways to feel in control, what our brain will do is say, oh, but how can that happen? Oh, but I don't have the money to do that. Or, oh, I don't have this or I don't have that, right? And so doubt starts to creep in because we allow our thoughts to go unchecked. And so, exactly, Moses. So the key is to be mindful of your thoughts. And anytime you hear a thought come up that does not align with what you know God said to you, you have to get in the habit of rejecting it immediately. Don't give doubt a chance to take root and kill that seed. You have to learn how to reject it. You have to learn how to say, okay, I refuse to believe that. I refuse to accept that. You have to learn how to guard your heart and your ear. Because a lot of times, too, it could be people around you that plant seeds of doubt. So you have to also be careful with who you are around, who you share your vision with, who you share your dreams with. Because people are very, very quick, very, very quick to plant those seeds of doubt, right? But you have to know that you know. So no matter what they think about it, no matter what you think about it, this is what God said to me. And because that's the seed that He planted in my heart, I'm going to protect it. I refuse to accept anything other than what God said. Because the Word of God has to become your reality. That has to become your reality. You're welcome, Grind. I'm so glad you were able to come on. It has to become your reality. And that's why I said earlier in this conversation, when we talk about the Bible, to me, I'm not talking about a storybook. It's not a storybook. We can't treat the Bible like a fairy tale and then wonder why it doesn't show up for us in real life. We can't treat the Word of God like a children's story. And I think the reason why that hits home for me so much is because I have seen the Word of God come to life in my situation. I know from experience that it is alive and it is active, right? I know what it's like to be in seasons where that's the only thing I had to cling on to. And so it has to be your reality. You have to get to a point where you are willing to reject what the world has to say. You are willing to reject whew, what people have to say. That can't be your reality. That can't be what you accept. That can't be what you let into your gates, right? You cling to the word. You cling to what God said to you. And you don't let it go until you see what he said to you. That's right. It's history and future. Exactly. Mm-hmm. You know, people can say what they want about the Bible, but it's the only book I ever read that didn't just change my mind, but changed my heart. So I say all that to say, I say all of that to say, this is what a governed life looks like. Stewardship, alignment, authority, strategy, fortification, preparation. This is what it looks like to walk it out in real time. And so, wow, like bubblegum to the shoes, don't let go without a fight to the truth. I know that's right. Oh my goodness. I'm going to have that image in my head now. Thank you for that. That was good. But yeah, so that's what I want for us this year. I want us to walk this out. I want us to live this. Okay? This can't just be something that we talk about in theory. It has to be lived through practice. So as you're going through the rest of your week, take the time to reflect on these principles and these questions. Take the time to apply it and to integrate it into your daily habits. And now that you have the information, now that you have the principles and the questions, you're going to start noticing things that you weren't noticing before because clarity was activated tonight. And so what happens is when you become clear about something or you become aware of something, it begins to make itself known to you. So you're going to start noticing things because with this kind of environment comes accountability, right? You're going to start noticing things this week in your life. And when you do, don't react to it, respond to it, govern it, structure it, make a different choice. Not everything requires your reaction. Some things just require reinforcement. Exactly. It worked. Okay. So if this conversation resonated with you tonight and you found yourself thinking deeper than usual, it's not an accident. This is the type of level of work that I work at consistently. Okay. And just in case you don't know yet, I do have a cohort that is launching this year and it starts April 1st. And in the cohort this year, we're going to be going so much deeper into integration, into strategy, and not just insight, but implementation. This is where I really get a chance to help people to execute and to implement the things that we talk about. So it's not just clarity, but it's also structure, right? And that's where belief is going to begin to turn into behavior, and ideas will get translated into decisions and systems and a new way of living that actually holds up under pressure. Okay, so if you're ready to stop collecting information and start living from a governed posture, definitely check out the cohort. It's going to be in the Leader Tribe Hub for you guys to check out as well. You'll find more information there, as well as the replay for tonight's live. So if you came in late, no worries. There will be a replay. I'll be sure to post about it probably tomorrow because it's late. But tomorrow I will post about it so you guys know that it's there for you to watch and get the other parts of the conversation that you may have missed. But this is what it's about, y'all. Let's walk this out in real life. Let's live a governed life. All right? So thank you all so much for tuning in. Do we have any last questions before I get off of here tonight? I want to respect everybody's time. Thank you. I appreciate it. Appreciate the love. Okay. Any other questions for me? All right, cool. If you do think of other questions, just still go ahead and comment them after the live is over. If I have a chance to, I'll respond to them in the chat. But I appreciate y'all for tuning in tonight. It's always so much fun for me to show up for you all and just to pour into other leaders. That's what I love to do. So thank you so much for respecting what I have to say and for showing up and taking yourself seriously to apply this information. So appreciate y'all. And next Leader Tribe Live will be next month on the third Wednesday. I think it's March 18th. So yeah, March 18th. So I will see you guys then, okay? Go live a governed life. Have a good night, everybody.